and we are excited to announce Bethany from Project Rousseau.
Hi, everyone. It's lovely to meet you. So today we're going to be talking about knowing your rights, the rights of migrant families and those of mixed status families. That means families of different immigration status here in New York City. As a disclaimer, although I am a Department of Justice representative, this presentation is for general information and should not constitute legal advice for anybody in particular listening. Next slide, please, Crystal. Great. Project Rousseau is a non-profit organization working with young people in communities of the greatest need. We work with young people on a variety of needs, including immigration services, and everything we do is totally free. If anyone would like to sign up for an individual immigration consultation, they can do so at Linktree, that is LINK.tree.PRIM.25. They can do so. Everything we do is free. That is for anything that we say today that might be interesting or that you might need extra assistance with. We will start today by talking about what rights do all New Yorkers have, regardless of their immigration status. The first that many of you will know because you are coming to us through the Department of Education today is that children have a right to free public education from K through to 12th grade or until they graduate at the age of 21. Young people in New York City are also entitled to in-state tuition at CUNY and SUNY, the public institutions, regardless of their immigration status. Children are also entitled to any additional supports they need in the classroom, regardless of their immigration status. That includes IEPs and any other additional supports that they might need. Children and their families, as well as adults in New York City, have a right to shelter. That means any New Yorker, regardless of their immigration situation, can seek shelter overnight at a public shelter. Just as we have all of our interpreters today, New York City services provided by the city are required to be offered to you in a language that you choose and understand. You have a right, regardless of your immigration status, to access and request that language support. Health is another right that New Yorkers have, regardless of their immigration status. This includes children's health insurance, a comprehensive plan. You may have heard of it as CHIP for young people under the age of 19, parent emergency care, and prenatal care for those who are pregnant or recently having given birth. All New Yorkers are entitled to accessibility, accommodations, and necessary access requirements through the Americans with Disabilities Act. Crucially, as we will talk about later, all New Yorkers, regardless of their immigration status, have the right to remain silent. Next slide, please, Crystal. As I mentioned, the right to remain silent is something that is very important, and it is something that is particularly important when interacting with law enforcement. Everyone, sorry, just go back to the previous slide. Perfect. Everyone has a number of rights that are the same regardless of immigration status when interacting with law enforcement. Everyone has the right to remain silent. Nobody has to consent to a search of their person or belongings, although the police may conduct a pat-down if they suspect a weapon on your person or in an item that you are carrying. Anyone, regardless of their immigration status, who is arrested by the local police has the right to a government-appointed lawyer if they cannot afford one. Everyone has the right to ask for a lawyer, and everyone has the right to make a local phone call after an arrest. If that call is to a lawyer, that call cannot be listened into by the police. A key right for immigrants is that nobody has to answer questions about their place of birth, their citizenship, entry to the United States, or immigration status. This can be exercised in the right to remain silent. Everyone has the right, regardless of their immigration status, to refuse to sign documents, and many people may choose to do so, to use that right if they have not consulted with a lawyer. Crucially, and I will talk more about this in a moment, everyone has the right to refuse the entry of the police, either local enforcement or federal enforcement officers, who do not have a signed correct warrant. The same principles also apply to everyone, regardless of their immigration status, to reduce risk. If you end up interacting with a police officer or another law enforcement officer, it's really crucial to stay calm, to not run, to keep your hands where you can see them, to not lie, to not present false documents, and to not resist or obstruct officers. Next slide, please. Many people may have heard that New York City is a sanctuary city. Indeed, New York City is currently a sanctuary city. New York State is not necessarily a sanctuary state, although it does have some policies that protect immigrants. There is no standard definition of what a sanctuary city is. In New York City, here are a couple of things that this means for you as immigrant New Yorkers. First, the New York Police Department is barred from honoring what is called an ICE detainer request. ICE is Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. They are the federal entity and officers that enforce immigration law. New York Police Department cannot hold an undocumented immigrant for longer than is normal if they arrest them. They also cannot notify ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, of that individual's release time. This means that if you are undocumented and you are at no greater risk of being detained by ICE simply for the fact that you have been arrested at that time. If you are charged with a crime, you may become at greater risk of being detained, but the period of time when you are arrested or about to be released, you are not at greater risk. The other key thing here in New York City is that city officials cannot share information about an immigrant's status unless it relates to a criminal matter. There are some exceptions, but in many, many cases, your information is safe. When this means that whether you are going for shelter, whether you are applying for a city program that offers you assistance, or whether you are at your child's school, your information and your child's information about their immigration status is safe. That means that you are safe to seek whatever services you need at the local level here in New York City that you might be eligible for, whether this is about your child's education, your child's health, or anything else that your child or you might need. Crucially, however, these policies do not prevent federal officers and federal officials from carrying out immigration enforcement in New York City. ICE can and do make arrests here in New York City, and this is very important to mention. Next slide, please. I've already mentioned that your children are safe in their schools, but one thing that is very important to know is that your child's school is what is considered a sensitive space by the Department of Homeland Security. These are one of 3 types of spaces where ICE, the Immigrations, Customs, and Enforcement officials, cannot operate. They cannot operate in schools, including after-school programs, on school buses and at school bus stops during school hours, and at any meetings that your child's school may have you to go to or attend. This is not just at the federal level. New York City public schools also have additional protections and policies in place to protect you and your children while they are at school and while you are in the school building. Your children are absolutely safe going to New York schools, and you are very safe going to any meetings, such as your child's IEP meetings at your child's school. There are two other categories of sensitive spaces. Next, healthcare facilities, including hospitals, doctors' offices, and other clinics. You are safe seeking care for your child, and ICE cannot operate in these facilities under current guidance. Likewise, places of worship, including mosques, churches, and synagogues, or any other faith-based institution, is a sensitive space where you are not at risk. This also applies to gatherings for different ceremonies, such as funerals, baptisms, weddings, and other forms of gatherings. Next slide, please. I'm now going to detail some important things to know about if you were to encounter an ICE officer. As a reminder, ICE is Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. These are the people that enforce immigration law. ICE can make arrests in public spaces. They cannot make arrests in the spaces I just mentioned, the sensitive spaces. Public spaces, however, such as the subway, grocery stores, and the streets, ICE can and do make arrests. They cannot enter, however, a private space without one of two things. I will explain what they are in a moment, but first let me explain what a private space includes. A private space includes your home. If you live in a shelter, it will include your shelter, as you will have to show an identification card to get into the shelter. But even if they were to enter the shelter spaces, which are communal, your room that you have in the shelter and you occupy is a private space. Private spaces also might exist in your workplace. It's anywhere that the public can't go. So for example, if you work in a hotel, the lobby may be a public space, but the kitchen or the laundry room would be a private space where only employees can go. ICE can only enter a private space with one of two things. First, a signed judicial warrant. This is a warrant that is correctly signed by a judge or judicial officer. It cannot just be signed by the immigration or police officer. The warrant must also be correctly completed, such as having the information about the person who is they want to arrest or the place they want to search. Alternatively, ICE can enter a private space with permission. One of the most important things I will say today is that opening the door can be seen as giving permission to enter a private space. This means if you are in your apartment or your home or in any other private space and you open the door to an ICE official, you are giving them permission to enter the premises. For this reason, it is highly recommended if there was someone to knock on your door that you did not know or that you thought might be an officer, to do two things. First, ask the officer to show identification without opening the door. For example, through the hole in the door or through a window. Next, ask the officer to slide a warrant under the door or hold it to a window to confirm that the warrant is valid. Again, an ICE officer can only enter a private space if they have a signed warrant by a judge or judicial officer. If you open the door, that is given permission. You cannot even open the door to request to see that warrant. You should shout through the door or through a window. You also continue to have the right to remain silent throughout all of these interactions. You do not have to answer questions. And this includes if they do have a warrant to enter the space. You do not have to answer questions, but you do have to allow a search. If an officer enters with a warrant, you can still say that you do not consent to the search. However, they will be allowed to continue the search. The other type of warrant that exists is an immigration warrant. This is a warrant of removal or deportation, but this type of warrant does not give the officer the right to enter a private space, such as your home. Next slide, please. If you were to be arrested by ICE, you do continue to have rights, and it's important to know and exercise your rights. As I mentioned before, you have the right to remain silent. This continues after you have been arrested. You have the right to remain silent throughout the entire interaction. You also have a right to speak to a lawyer. This is something that is important to think ahead and have a plan in place. You might want to write down the name of a lawyer that you would want to be calling and carry this on your person. You might also want to try and memorize the phone number of a lawyer. If you do not have your own immigration lawyer, first, try and seek one yourself. We are offering free immigration consultations at Project Rousseau, and I will just repeat where you can sign up. That is LINKTR.PRIM25. There are also a number of organizations that do detained immigrant defense, and you can look these up online and remember some of these numbers. These would be very important numbers to know. Everyone has the right to make a local call. That means a call within the United States after they have been arrested. It is very, very important that you do not lie and you do not share false information if you have been arrested. This can only hurt you in the future. It can also harm those trying to help you. If you have family members trying to locate you or others trying to help you, if you have given a false name, that becomes very, very difficult. Whilst you should not lie, you do not have to share where you were born, your immigration status, any information about your criminal history, your passport, your birth certificate, or any other documentation that might give away information about your immigration status, unless that is included in a warrant that the ICE officer has. One thing that is very important to think ahead about is what form of identification do you have? In New York City, all immigrants and all New Yorkers, regardless of their immigration status, are eligible to have what is called an ID NYC. ID NYC is an identification card available to everyone over the age of 10 in New York City, and it does not give any information about your immigration status, where you were born, or anything else that could put you at risk. It simply states things such as your name, your date of birth, and your current address. If you do not have a New York City ID, it could be a good idea to get one of these in the coming weeks or months to ensure that you can show your identification without your immigration status. As I've said before, you do not need to sign anything, and you should not sign anything without consulting an attorney. Another important right that you have is the right to express fear to return to your home country. If you have not filed for asylum already, that is something that you should look into doing if you have a fear of returning to your home country. You should seek an immigration lawyer or a Department of Justice's advice on doing that if you have a fear of returning to your home country for one of 5 reasons. 1, persecution because of your race. 2, persecution because of your religion. 3, persecution because of your nationality. 4, persecution because of your political opinion. Or 5, persecution because of your membership in a particular social group that is recognizable in your country. The persecution either has to be at the hands of your government in your home country, or the government is unwilling or unable to protect you. Everyone has the right to apply for asylum if they have fear based on one of these grounds that I just expressed. If you are arrested and you have a fear for one of these reasons, you will have the right to continue expressing it. Next slide, please. Some families may want to consider an emergency plan. An emergency plan is a plan and things that you would want others to do on your behalf if you were unable to make those actions. A safety plan probably will involve a trusted friend or family member. You will share with that trusted family member or trusted friend important personal information, such as your full name, your date of birth, your citizenship and immigration status, and your alien number. This can be found on your immigration papers. You would also share in this plan information about your children. For children and families with children with additional needs, this might be particularly important as you're able to share childcare plans, children's medication, allergies, or other information that would be very important to know if you were not there to take care of your child. You can also share information such as your child's school, health insurance for your family, or anything else that you think would be important for that person temporarily looking after your child to know. You might also share emergency contact information, such as information about your attorney or about family members that you would want to know what was happening to you. You might also want to consider planning for financial resources and ways to have other people access those financial resources if you are unable to do that. It can be helpful to prepare one binder with all of these important documents in, and that is a place in a safe place, not on your person. Do not carry it around, but it's somewhere safe at home that this trusted individual would know. Another thing that can be very important to do is to carry a contact card with information about your attorney or legal aid numbers on. In addition to, or on the same card, a card stating your rights and the wishes that you have. For example, your right and wish to remain silent, or that you would like to see a warrant. This can be helpful if you don't speak English, as a number of organizations have these cards in multiple languages, both in your language, but also in English. So if you are unable to communicate to the person, you can show them that line, that card. That said, you do have a right to receive interpretation in a language that you understand if an ICE officer or NYPD officer was to stop you. I'm now going to unpack some things that you might want to consider if your child has additional needs. First of all, in the home setting, if you were to have an ICE officer come who had a warrant who entered your home, you do have the right to inform them that there is a vulnerable person in the home. You have the right to tell them that there's a child there and if that child has any needs. The other thing that is very important to know is your child's immigration status does not affect any support they receive at school. For example, if they have an IEP, that does not change with their immigration status. Every family has the right to seek an IEP or extra support for their children based on a disability or learning difference that their child may have. Okay, and with that, I'm going to repeat one more time that Project Rousseau has a number of resources that might be helpful to you, including immigration evaluations for those wishing to seek asylum, wishing to seek support applying for special immigrant juvenile status, which is a form of immigration relief for young people under the age of 21 years old in New York State, who have been abused, abandoned, or neglected by one or more parent, or for those who may have been a victim of a crime committed by a United States citizen or legal permanent resident, or those who are a victim or trying to leave a violent relationship with a United States citizen or a legal permanent resident. Project Rousseau has immigration evaluations for all of the above forms of immigration relief. They are with a member of our legal team. They are totally free. They're available in a language that you choose, and everything you tell us is confidential. If we are able to take your case, we then offer what is called full scope representation, which means that one of our legal team accompanies you and represents you throughout the entirety of your immigration case. This is available to all families in New York City or any young people under the age of 21 living in New York City. That can be accessed at linktree/PRM25. I will repeat that. LINKTRE/PRIM25. And as my final three things that I'm going to remind you is three very important things that we talked about. Number one, you have the right to remain silent. Number two, you should not open the door to any officer who does not have a signed judicial warrant. And number three, you do not have to answer questions about your place of birth, your citizenship, or your immigration status. And one of the best ways to get ID without declaring those information is through an ID NYC, available free to all New Yorkers over the age of 10, regardless of immigration status. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Johanna, who is going to share a little bit more about how you can seek access and supports for your children in New York City public schools.
Thank you so much, Bethany, for all that information. My name is Johanna Rodriguez. I'm the Central Parent Advocate out of the Special Education Office, and we would be remiss if we do not mention what is available to your students who may have a disability. Krista, if you could leave the PowerPoint up, that would be great. It's just the last slide I'm going to share. So in New York City public schools, disability services are called special education services. All students with disabilities are welcome into our New York City public schools, including our students in temporary housing and those families who are seeking asylum. As mentioned before, disability services are known here in New York City as special education. When a student with a disability moves to New York City, families should provide any documentation or information about their child's disability, health, development, or learning from their home country. When appropriate, when these documents are given, a comparable service plan or a CSP will be created for their child by their new school or the Committee on Special Education, also known as our CSEs. Once a child starts attending school, a team will begin the evaluation process to determine whether an individualized education plan, an IEP, is needed. You'll be asked for written consent for evaluations so that providers can determine the most appropriate supports, programs, and services Together, they'll create a personalized plan to ensure your child has a full access to our public education. If you have any questions or concerns regarding special education, please connect with us at specialeducation@schools.nyc.gov. It's here on the slides. Please make sure you write your name and your child's name when you are writing to the email. I want to thank you all for coming today. I want to thank our presenter Bethany from Project Rousseau for coming tonight. Again, if you have any questions, our email is right here on the slide. Thank you again. We look forward to you all joining our Beyond Access series next month. May you all have a happy holidays and have a good evening. Bye.